is the main character. Manifest Destiny definitely it's a one-off, and that's it. So
yeah. And Mary, I know you have. How many books do you think this was going to be? 4, wasn't it?
It started off as 4, but I've decided to break the first one into 2, so about 5 total in my head.
Okay, so you only have the one right now.
The one right now, yeah. I kind of I had it the first 2 as one originally, and so I had the entire thing almost finished, and it was just massive.
Yeah.
And so I was trying to think more about how to market it, and it was better the way I had it was basically 2 plots in one book anyway.
Okay.
And so it lent itself easily to break it up.
Good.
And so I decided just to throw all my energy into that first one and get it going, and then go back and finish up that last part.
Okay.
Mike had the opposite problem with his last one. It's like 2 books and just one.
I know. I actually posted it on Facebook. What do you guys think? And it was. Let me show you. I think you've all seen it. Looks good from here. It's 640, 630, 626. So
it's 26. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's big. But you know what it is though? It was the genre. It was fantasy. So when I posted that to Facebook, the majority of the people that were non-fantasy sci-fi people were like, "Oh no, that's going to be 2 books, 3 books." But all the fantasy people, it's not big enough. So it goes with the genre. So I could, and I went to Barnes and Noble, and I'm not lying to you when I say my book was small compared to most of the fantasy books there. I saw some that were 1,200 pages, and it's just crazy. So,
I was just looking at the. I saw the terrible adaptation of Stephen King's Dark Tower books.
Yep.
And well,
those are huge too, right?
Well, yeah. So I went through the books. Some of them are like 350 pages, and other ones are like 780 something pages. It depends on the book. So.
And Dr. Mike, you got a ton of books, but do you have any series books?
No, I've not done series, and I probably won't, but I'm interested to hear how you think about it.
Okay. So we have a nice little intimate group here, so we should be able to just have a nice chat. Yeah, that was just one of the things I wanted to talk about, because a lot of people have asked me in the past, how do you write a series? And I never really had a chance to like talk about it, because I'm always doing so many other things. And I think like Mary said, I didn't quite intend it to be that way. I mean, the first book wasn't even written first. I mean, this book came in, I actually started this story after they found what they were looking for, and then they needed to use what they found. And Kevin, being one of my original readers way back when we were just getting out of college, was more like, well, how did they get this? Where did they come from? And I had all those questions, and I was just telling people, and they're like, no, we want to read about it. So that's when I realized, oh, my one book is now, 2. And then as I wrote the second book, I said, oh, my 2-book story is now a trilogy. And when the trilogy came, I said, no, it's a series now. So I think the biggest thing, and I mentioned this before, I can't remember if you were in the very first session, the world building. There are 2 kinds of people in this world, the plotters and the pantsers. And I am definitely a plotter. I could not imagine writing through, God, I think I got like 1,200, 1,500 pages here. How do you just write that out and just on the fly and keep going? So I plot everything out. But when you have a series, you have to do 2 things. One, you have to have an outline for each individual book, and each individual book should have its own, obviously a beginning and an end, but the characters need to attain their goal in that story. But in the same respect, it needs to move the whole story arc forward. So you basically have an outline for your first book, and then you have a series outline, and you need to connect those dots. So, and that's why I said when I was writing the last book, do I make these 2 books? And it would have really been, I think it was Harry Potter had part 1 and part 2 for the ending. And mine would have been like a part 1 and a part 2. And the part 1, I think, was stronger than the part 2, if that even makes sense, because it had more pages to it. So it probably would have been a book about 400 pages, and the last one would have been about 300, which is a lot. Don't get me wrong, that's a lot. However, it wouldn't have been the same as the first 2 books, which were quite large. So it made more sense to keep it all in one. But the big point was that outline for the 4th book was probably 4 or 5 pages long in Microsoft Word. So it was a large, a lot of things that had to get accomplished there. But it was all pertinent to the way the story was going to end on the bigger picture, if that makes sense. So I think the biggest thing, I always outline. Any book I write, I outline it. I have to. And then the series itself, you have to do the same thing with. And the major points that have to be hit to have the storyline go forward. When you're in a book, you have your beginning, you have your middle, your climax, and then your end. Well, the same thing has to happen for the series. And within the series, it's those individual books that are driving the beginning, the middle, the climax, and the end. And you have to run it that way. So does that make sense to you guys? Yeah, that's basically what I've come up with. The whole other way, like, then you have the post-production. So how do you produce not just the books, but how do you produce it as a series? In a perfect world, I would have all the books written, and then I would say, okay, each year at Christmas time, the next book's going to come out. Kind of like what they do with Star Wars movies, right? Have it come out and hit, and then feed them along the way. And when things get a little slow in the summertime, you hit them again with coming soon, and you stop promoting that and you ramp it back up for the next one. I think I've mentioned to you guys before, I'm an engineer, so I don't have the luxury of writing full time. And engineering is a very mind-numbing job, especially when you're dealing as a government contractor. It's either red or it's blue, and then you have to define that. Now, that's not creative at all, So the opposite of writing dragon stories and taking care of Baby Yoda is a whole much more fun than doing the engineering work. So what I try to do is when I go to my book signings, or really, which is kind of surprising, is the Comic-Cons. Comic-Cons have really, I'm surprised at how well we do at Comic-Cons. I went to Tampa Bay Comic-Con in 2019 with Tabitha and Heather, and I sold out. I sold out all my books. We did 5 panels of presentations, and I know the girls brought 100 books a piece, and I do believe they sold 75 a piece. So it was just crazy. But the biggest thing that happened was these people buy series, and they love to hear that, what are you doing next? What's next in the series? And if you have something to keep it going, there it is. And you can keep pushing it along. So my advice to you is, if you have a standalone, that's great. But if you have a series, write the books and market them. It's coming soon. It's coming soon. And then when you say it's coming soon, try the best you can to hit that mark. Because if people do forget and they go to other things. So if it takes, like mine, 8 years in between book 3 and book 4, it gets to be a little slow. But it can be done. And I think that's the way you need to move it forward. Does that make sense? And we have a question. I know.
Yeah,
Mary,
Mike. So when you started the Overlords, you knew it was going to be a series right away, or did you start? I always think there's 2 mentalities with this. I'm gonna write a book, and then I'm gonna take the character and I'm gonna say there's more I can do with this guy, so I'm gonna write more. Like the one I'm working on right now, I love the character. I think the book is going to be, so I think the book's going to be a series, but I have no idea what the next 3 or 4 books are going to contain. So I don't have the series outlined. I have my book outlined, but I don't have the series outlined. But I think the character is somebody that could be, used in additional books, especially because of the genre. It's like a thriller. It's nothing too. It's kind of like a David Baldacci kind of guy, like a Jack Reacher or a person like that, or a Amos Decker kind of person. So I don't have the series planned out. I have the book outlined.
Yep.
So when you were writing the Overlords, did you have the whole series outlined, or did you start with the first book and you're like, well, maybe they can do this now? And I think I kind of know the answer to that, but I really want to hear your take on that.
I definitely, in my mind, I knew how it was going to end.
The series or the series?
The first two books, I knew exactly how they were going to end, for sure. And then I realized that, well, there's more to this story to have it go. So that's when I came out with book 3. When book 3 was being written, I realized, oh, there's more beyond book 3. And that's when I had to start melding my series outline. So I thought it was going to be 3 books. I thought it was going to be 1 book, and then it became the 2, then the 3, and then now 4, and almost 5. So after I wrote the second book and I was outlining the 3rd one, and what I ended up doing was I had an outline that literally was going on for pages and pages and pages. And I went, this is more than 1 book. This may be 2 more books. And so I had to take a look at, okay, where's this story going and where can I logically end it so I can continue with the next book, but to keep the series going. So that's how book 3 came to be, with an eye toward book 4. And then when book 4 was being written, which was kind of neat, I wrote the whole thing out, sent it to my editor, and I said, when you're reading this, I want to hear from you where you think it could logically break into 2 books, because I think it could, but I think I want it to continue to going, but I want to hear what you think. And after she read it, because I think it could end here, which is exactly where I thought too. And I was like, that's when I said, okay, before I go further, let me put it out there to the fans. What do they think? And I had pretty much made up my mind that it was going to be 1 book, but it was good to hear that the sci-fi fantasy lovers were like, no, 1 big book, and that worked that way. So I could have went to 5 books, but I definitely had a look in my head about the series arc. So that's kind of how I did it.
Okay, thanks.
Mary, you have a question? I see.
I did. I hope it's not a stupid one. I'm trying to go.
No stupid question.
So I broke my first one up into 2. So it's going to be like a duology as far as like, from start to finish with that plot. But my 4 stories, it centers around this one family, but each book kind of focuses on a certain character within their universe. So it's the same universe, but it's not one continuous story. So when I publish, am I marketing as a series, or should I say the Chronicles? I don't really think it's a saga. So I'm not sure what terminology should I market it as, because there really is no Harry Potter. It's not, the very, very end is when we defeat the villain. It's not quite like that. There's different stories being told within that universe. And so I'm kind of curious how to market that.
So the stories, all right, let me see if I got this right.
Because the first 2 go together, start to finish.
Okay. And then, okay. So
but the sections are character based as opposed to plot based, right?
Yes.
And when you were describing this, sorry, Mike, if I could interject.
No, go ahead.
When you were describing this, the first thing I thought of was J.R.R. Martin's Game of Thrones, where each books are broken up by, it's more focused on a character in the world of J.R.R. Martin. So, 1 book will be Daenerys, another one will be, the Imp, another one will be the King, and so when you were describing it, that's how I mean, granted, in the whole scheme of things, there's this overarching plot that has a beginning and end, with the winter is coming and stuff like that. But the books are very they're broken up. It's almost like you get every character's point of view of what's going on in the universe, which obviously they try to do it. I haven't read the books as a confession, but I know people who have read it, and that's what. And we used to have the Monday morning coffee talks about Game of Thrones after Sunday night, and they used to talk about how the book was broken up into as like characters like that, and that's tough to do in a movie, in a series, you know, an HBO series, because trying to get into the head like that is a little difficult. I think they did an awesome job with it, but that's what it reminded me of when you were describing it.
Yeah, the other thing that I think of too is it kind of like the Marvel universe where you have all these characters and they do one thing, but there's something that links it together to the whole. And then there's another story that does this, but links it to the whole. And Kevin, you know, he's a big comic book guy. So if you had Captain America goes off here, and then the Hulk, and then the Guardians of the Galaxy, and but they all have like the Infinity Stones are all in there, and then it comes all together for what was it? Endgame and what was
Endgame.
it?
Infinity War, and then Endgame.
Infinity War and Endgame. Yeah. So all these different, even though these were movies, all these different characters' stories had something that linked them all together, but they went off and did their own thing, and then they all came together, and the story went forward from there.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. That's a great analogy.
So it almost sounds like what you have is you have a story, then these characters go off, and then they come back. Is that?
Yes. I'm trying to describe it in a way that won't sound so cliche, but in the first book, you know, you're introduced, the main character doesn't know that world exists. And so when she travels to it, the reader goes with her.
Okay.
And so the other books, you're just taking to that spot already. And so it's linked through different points in time. And so the final book, you know, it's based around their kingdom is overthrown. And so that was kind of like that, what set everything off. And so the first book, you travel back and learn what happened. The other books kind of take place either right before or right after, but that's what they all have in common, is what the family does around that one event. And so I'm trying to wonder, when I go to market it, can I say a series? Because to me, it seems chopped up. There's no chronological order, so to speak.
Yeah, that's let me think about that. It is tricky. So you okay, let's step it back one. What is your genre? Is it fantasy, sci-fi?
It's young adult fantasy.
Okay, so
young adult, new adult. I know new adult's kind of one of those, it gets used in some places, but not others. It's that older teen, young 20s.
Okay, but the genre itself is fantasy.
Fantasy, yes.
Okay, so it's going to be a fantasy storyline.
That's why I was thinking, like, my kingdom is named Hydeland, and so I was like, do I say Hydeland Chronicles, something that they're linked, but not necessarily, you know, you're not going to follow the same character through all 5 books. You're going to get to visit different members of this family.
Yeah, well, I think what Kevin said with what's his name?
Game of Thrones.
Yeah, Game of Thrones. The Story of Fire and Ice, right? Isn't that the name of the series? So much.
It's the series is Story of Fire and Ice, and Game of Thrones is one of the books in that series, right?
Right. So you probably should come up with what would you call it? The Chronicles? What was it?
Highland Chronicles.
The Hydeland Chronicles.
Yeah. So that could be your series. Like my series is the Overlords. So the Overlord.
That's what I was thinking, because I figured book 1, I would just call it Hydeland. The other books would have different titles, and then their subtitle would be the Hydeland Chronicles, book 2, book 3.
See, but Mike brings up a good point, though. You might want to make the whole series called like the Highland Chronicles and come up with a different name for
book 1 too.
For the first book as well.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So the Highland Chronicles is your Overlords, is the Avengers and stuff like that. And then in there, like I have the Overlords, but the first book is Legend of the Treasure. Second one's Talisman of Unification, but it's under the Overlord's umbrella.
That was my next question, so I thank you.
Yeah, so I think that makes sense. Now, within that, you need to, that's how you drive your story, from one to the next, to the next, to the next. And that's where your series arc goes. Okay. So how does book 1 flow to book 2, to book 3? And I'm assuming that all those books flow to a common ending goal, right?
Yes, yes, because the last book, with the exception of the first book where she has to travel back, the fourth book does come last within that timeline,
Okay.
as far as, chronologically speaking.
Yeah.
So I could tie it all together.
Okay.
So the two things, like with Mike's book, each book could stand, which is kind of why when I was reading it, I was glad that he didn't break up the fourth book into two books, because each book can stand on its own from front to back.
Yeah.
I mean, you lose something if you don't read the first book before you read the second book, because, like I'll use the comic book analogy where they have like the 1 or 2 panel highlight of what happened in issue, 79 when they're in issue 83. They do like a quick little summary. With Mike's books, you don't want the summary. You want to read the whole first book. But if you just took the second book or the third book and you read it, you could get through it without having so many unanswered questions that you didn't know what's going on.
Yeah, I think what you want to
is to go through each book and read through it that way. So
yeah,
the thing is too, like I was going to say, if you have the Highland Chronicles and your first one is awesome, which I imagine it would be. Once you have that, it's almost like you're maintaining your readership just by anytime you say the Highland Chronicles, that they're going to want that second book. You don't want to. That's what you want to emphasize. You don't want to say like whatever the name of the second book is, and then have Highland Chronicles lower. You want to have it big and it'd be like the second book of the Highland Chronicles or whatever. Just make sure that they know it's part of the series, like Mike does with the Overlords. Yeah.
There's book 1, book 2. So you got your series up top, and then you got the underneath
The installment on the bottom. Right?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I appreciate that, because that was my question, was do I include book 1 in that?
Yeah, I think what you do is just kind of like what we were saying, is you make it the umbrella. Yeah. And just make sure it drives it. Kevin made a very good point. You do want to have your books be able to be standalone. Case in point, remember when the Lord of the Rings movies came out, and what was the Fellowship of the Ring was the first one.
Yeah.
I remember because I read the books, and I knew what was going to happen, and I knew that they were going to have 3 movies come out because they were filming them all at the same time, and they were coming out on Christmas each year. But my wife didn't know that, and we went to the movies, and after how long was that first movie? 2.5 hours, almost.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah,
they're very long, and it ends with the hobbits going in one direction, and I think Boromir and I forgot, and Legolas, everybody went the other way, and then it was over, and she's like, "What happened? What's gonna?" And Mary, my wife, so she's like, "What? What?" I go, "No, next year they're gonna continue it." She's like, "Next year?" In the movie theater, and people were like laughing because she's like, "This is stupid," But that's kind of like what can happen if you break things up and they're not finished. And when I actually wrote the first book, let me make sure I say this right. The beginning of book 2 was in the beginning of, how did it go? What I'm trying to get at is
story. I think you told me that story about where you didn't finish and Laura got mad at you.
Yeah, she got very mad at me. She was like, "You can't leave your audience hanging." I said, "Oh, but it's coming in the next book." She goes, "No, if the characters don't get any gold set, then you're gonna lose all your audience. They're gonna be like, I'm not gonna fall for this again. What if he writes another book and he doesn't, and nothing happens, and he writes another book and nothing happens?"
I actually read about that when I first made the decision to break my book up.
Yeah.
But at the time, I wanted to do traditional publishing, and it was like, if your book's longer than this, they're not even going to consider you. And so at the time, that's what made me split the book. And I thought, oh, I have the best spot. It's a cliffhanger, and it's perfect. And so I was like, this is it. And then I Googled, never end on a cliffhanger, and it was like, oh my God. So I found a way to tie it into 2 separate plots, but the first 2 are linked as far as, a plot wise. 3 through 5 kind of stand on their own. But
Okay.
and I worried about that. You know, is that going to look choppy? But the way I'm doing it and the characters, I'm hoping it will at least flow.
Yeah.
Well, and identifying the series is really important. I mean, I used the classic of like one of the best pantsers in all of movie creation history. The first movie was not called A New Hope. It was called Star Wars, right? So they kind of flipped it. They said, and you know, when you go to the movie, you see Star Wars and then you see episode 1, A New Hope. It's like, wait a minute, no, episode 4, A New Hope. Right away, confusion. It's like, wait a minute. Did we miss 3 other movies? You know, I went with my Uncle George, Mike, and I'm like, this is the 4th one. Where's the other 3?
I can see you saying that too.
Shut up and watch. So, but what George Lucas wanted to do is he wanted to establish the brand. So, you know, the brand isn't A New Hope. The brand is Star Wars. The first installment or the 4th installment is A New Hope. But the first movie you see, blah, blah, blah. So that's, I think, something from a marketing standpoint you want to, so you're going to have to really think about what you want to call the first book, because, you know, would have been any less impactful if the first movie was called Star Wars, which everybody refers to it as anyways, you know, and then he just named the whole series after, or if he named it, I think what he did was right. I think if he named the first movie A New Hope, it wouldn't have had as much punch, you know what I mean? So
yeah, I think when he did that, he only had enough money for the first movie.
Yeah.
So we're like, okay, we need to have the biggest bang for the buck, and it's Star Wars.
Right.
And then, you know, from there, it got huge, obviously. And now they're like, oh yeah, no, it's really A New Hope. It's A New Hope. But everybody knows, oh, did you see Star Wars? Remember in Star Wars? And it's, you know, it's the one where Luke blows up the Death Star. That's Star Wars.
And it's still referred to as Star Wars.
Yeah, and it always will be, but technically it's a book. So that's why what we say for you, same thing with my books and stuff, have that up front. And then, you know, I think Kevin, when people say, oh, yeah, when the Highland Chronicles, oh, yeah, that book's 1, 2, 3, 4 within there. So
Well,
definitely
I'm so glad this meeting happened when it did, because I'm working with the cover designer for the next couple of weeks. So I got to her just in time that I can be like, oh yeah, we're going to do this now.
Yeah, and I think you get it. And I think when you do the cover, what you want to do is definitely put the series up here and the title down here, and then you have your cover design image in the middle. Okay.
Yes.
If you didn't, if it was a standalone book, then I think you can put wherever you wanted. But when it's a series, definitely try to get it up top. So, oh yeah, Star Wars or the Overlords, and which book is it? It's this one. So
They
say
can see it right away and it pulls their,
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
Like like Robert Jordan, the Wheel of Time series. It was always the Wheel of Time, and then it was was underneath it. And the other thing to think of too is like I'll use Game of Thrones as an example again. Mike said the name of the series is really, it's A Song of Fire and Ice. That's series. A Game of Thrones was one book in that series. It's just when HBO wanted to market the series, they thought that A Game of Thrones was more marketable, I think, and people still refer to it as A Game of Thrones. They don't refer to it as A Song of Fire and Ice.
Right.
Which again, I think was a good move on HBO's part. Just because, I think movie goers have inherently a lower attention span than book readers. So book readers know that it's A Song of Fire and Ice, and the movie goers know it as Game of Thrones. So
yeah, and a lot of times, definitely when you get like to the Hollywoods and the big box office stuff, you want something that's easily recognizable. So when things are easily recognizable, then people can definitely, understand. Oh yeah, Star Wars. I know, and the whole Star Wars universe and all the movies and everything that comes with it. If you went and said something obscure that was in that, like not too sure. So definitely get something that will be recognizable and something short. Like my favorite, my favorite group are the Beatles. And if they came out with Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band today, the studio would be going, no. How about just Sgt. Pepper's? That's why I called it Sgt. Pepper's, but Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. And So you don't, especially when you're new, you don't want to come up with a 12-word, this is my, Mary Catlin's fantastic rainbow colored unicorn parade. No. It's just a unicorn parade. Yeah.
Well, and some authors, I'll use James Patterson and Baldacci as an example. Like they have series that they're not really called anything, but, and they're notorious for like I get a bunch of his books. The titles are so like, The Hit, The Lip, The Last, they're like, let's pick a word and throw it out there, apple pie, whatever. But the thing is too, like people know that it's part of like the Amos Decker series as far as Baldacci is concerned, or the Alex Cross series from James Patterson. But it's not as apparent until you look at the book and because a lot of times the title doesn't really mean anything with the book. And I know I'm being generalizing, but I apologize. And these guys are making a lot more money doing this than I am. So, but it's the references, the characters like, oh yeah, this is one of the Amos Decker series. It's not like, there's it's grouped into like a Overlords or a Star Wars or a Song of Fire and Ice kind of thing like that. So if the character is strong enough, you can use that as the indicator for the series. From what you're talking about with your book, it sounds like you have a bunch of like several strong characters in the series that you're going to base the book on. So you wouldn't want to call it the Luke Skywalker series. You wouldn't want to call it the Darth Vader series. You want to call it the Highlands Chronicles because that encompasses everybody. So where Star Wars encompasses Luke, Han, Darth, everybody that we all know and love so well. So yeah, but that's the marketing piece. I mean, you get which Mike covered in one of his last sessions that he just did. But that's stuff that like when you go through, I think traditional publishing, that's stuff that they're going to look at as well. How can we market it? How can we get repeat readers? What's going to be the hook and stuff like that? So.
Yeah, and I wanted to try. I mean, it's one of those. I knew that the market, it's like a 99% rejection rate. Like it's one of those. You have to try it to say you did, but I always knew I'd probably end up with self-publishing, and I'd like to keep the control as well. But it's just not my book right now. It's just not what's hot in the market. It's not what they're advertising for. And I don't want to change my work to fit that either, because then it's not really what I wanted to write about in the first place. Right. So I feel at least on this route, I stand a better chance of at least, this is my work and being proud of it and not quite, okay, well, what do you want? Let me write it what you want. I didn't really want to go that route either.
Yeah, that's usually not a good thing to do, because you'd be going, okay, what's hot right now? Oh, werewolves are hot now. So I'm going to write a really good werewolf story. I take a year to do it. I get it done. I pitch it out there, and you get it to the agents. No, we're into zombies now.
Yeah.
Well, write what you want to write, and then, it'll fit where it's going to fit.
And so much, without getting into detail, so much of what they're looking for right now is civil rights and political pieces and things like that. And that's not even what my book's about. And it's not the way I would market my book about, anyway. And so it was one of those, I tried to look for agents that weren't quite looking for that. But at the same time, we have 12 weeks to get back to you. Well, I don't want to sit 3 weeks and 3 months to get back to you. Okay, well, in the meantime, and yeah. So I've been working on this book for 14 years. I'm ready.
Yeah, I hear you.
I need to hold this with mine. I started it when I was a senior in high school. I have since taught for 9 years, got my master's degree, got married, had 2 kids. I need to hold my book. I feel like I've done my time. I need to hold it.
It is time. I think what you can do is definitely that's kind of what I do with mine. I started writing in 1992. And I probably got to, it was published in 2006, okay? So it got to that point as well. And that was before you had all of the print on demand and things like that. Mm-hmm. So I went the traditional route. And my book originally got published on iUniverse because there was no other things, no Amazon before. And I got the book in my hand. It was way too expensive. And when print on demand came in, I went and did it myself, and I've done so much better. So I understand exactly how you feel. It took a long time to get to that point, and you want something. And, you know, sometimes going the agents and the publishers route, it's not for everybody. And, you know, sometimes I think, well, this was probably the best route for me because I'm an engineer. I don't really have time because let's say my book does fairly well with the publisher, and they say, this is great. Now we're going to give you $10,000, but we need you to finish in 6 months for the second book. I'm like, well, $10,000 sounds good if I still got my day job. No, I'm brain dead after 8 hours of engineering work. I can't write 2-3 hours and then be on a deadline for a publisher. So publishers like to have things make money consistently without having to wait at all. You know, they want to have it on all of their on their terms and drive it that way. It's even you could probably even talk to people who are huge, like the Stephen Kings and stuff like that, and be like, oh yeah, the studios or whatever, blah blah blah. Don't listen to them. It's the same thing in the recording industry. We need another album. Well, I'm going to use the Beatles again. The Beatles came out, took a very long time to do, excuse me, Sgt. Pepper's. But the reason was because they came out with hit after hit after hit after hit from 64 to 67. And they had 2 fantastic songs that should have been on Sgt. Pepper's, which were Penny Lane and Strawberry Fields, that the studio said, we need to give the public something. So George Martin said, here, just take these 2. And they were phenomenal songs. But imagine if those 2 were put in the right order on Sgt. Pepper's, which was, I mean, so you get what you get from the entertainment business and the publishers. They always want to keep moving because they want that gravy train to never stop. And we are, we're not Stephen King's, and on the gravy train, we're the ones that are trying to chase up to the, because for some reason they got all the money and the royalties just kind of stream out slowly to you. So it's not, it's not exactly how it sounds like it's going to be. So I did go the self-publishing route because I've been selling a lot of books at all my Comic-Cons and stuff, and I'm very comfortable with doing that. Sure, I would love to see the Overlords be on the big screen like everybody else would, but it's not really my call for the most part. Someone's going to have to see it, and then like in the movie studios, and go from there. And you know, there's only a couple of 1 or 2 people that send stuff to movie theaters, right? Yeah, right. Thousands of them.
No problem.
So that's the thing.
Okay.
But believe it or not, we only got 5 more minutes left because I got a 3 o'clock coming up. That one should be a lot of fun. That one's with Tabitha Lord and Heather Rigney, and it's a hero, an anti-hero, and a villain walk into a bar, and it's kind of a anything goes kind of thing. So that'll be good. I know everybody here has already got my books, so I don't need to pitch them. So I guess we get time for another question or 2. Do you have anything else? It's 2:40. I see Heather on there again from Hawaii. The expo has unlimited reach. We go to any state we can. So thanks for coming on again. So do we have anything else that I think we covered?
So, Mary, I got a question for you. So is your first book's completed?
Yes.
And your second one you're already working on?
Yes.
And that was originally part of the first book, but
It was originally I was going on about 187,000 words, and Mike was like, "That's all, I got you beat," you know. And so as I was starting to finish it up, I just kept, at the time I had traditional publishing dreams, and things were just like, you better break that up. Yeah, at least maybe, you know, you should probably break it up. And so now I've just gotten to the point where I have, so I'm just going to stick with it. But it's mostly already written. It's a matter of going back and just polishing it up now.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing right now. Matter of fact, about an hour ago, I just sent my second draft to my consultant, who's going to go through with a fine tooth comb and pick over it the next month or so. I'm trying to look for a January. My goal is a January 1st submission to agents deadline. So I'm trying to go the traditional route. And two things about that. You said 99% of the time, you get rejected if you submit it to an agent. So theoretically, if you send it out 100 times, you should be.
I should.
No problem.
Yeah.
And the other thing to think of, I was talking to somebody about this the other day. How many times was, the epitome, how many times was J.K. Rowling refused by publishers?
13?
Oh, no, more than that. I
No,
think
more than that.
So it was,
Almost 100.
13 was the big number that started it all. And then I think,
Right.
at one point, yeah.
Because, and how many of those people who refuse her still have jobs and are, crapping their pants every time somebody else sends a book in there because they're saying, what if I give this one up and it's the next, Harry Potter thing? So, it's, I think people make their own luck in the fact that, the more they work and the more they submit stuff out and, like Mike, he did the 4 books himself, but he gets out there and he pounds the pavement and he does the Comic-Con. So, luck is esoteric, but you make some of your own luck. You know what I mean? If you sit on the couch and watch movies all day, you're not going to get any writing done. If, like Mike says, if you do 1 page a day, at the end of the year, you have 365 pages. So you could be able to recite every line from every Star Wars movie, every Matrix movie, the whole Game of Thrones series. But when it's like, what have you done yourself? You can't, I didn't write that 1 page a day. So,
not to quote Oprah Winfrey, but she defined success. That's another topic.
Stop recording.
Yeah. Is when preparation meets opportunity. And that's when you hit success. And I think I've prepared quite a bit. I maybe just haven't hit the opportune point at this time. But by getting out there, by doing the Comic-Cons, by doing these kind of events, doing the book signings, going to the schools, paying it forward, somebody's got to see me, right?
You're in a good position too because of the social network following too. Like I have plans, I might try to keep trying to get agents with further books as well, but at least get a foundation going because they're always like, write a paragraph about your publishing history. I have to skip that part and it doesn't help,
Next question.
Yeah, next. And then it's like, include a bio about yourself if it's related to writing. I teach kindergarten. They don't care about that. Yeah. It's one of those that can't go in the query letter, or it's very useless if it is in there. So it's just kind of, I'm trying to build up, but you have that really good foundation where if they pick you up, you've already got something there.
Well, that's a good point, because just because you're self-published doesn't mean that you can't eventually get picked up by a publishing house later to just take the whole thing and explode it. Because for them, it's great.
It's new. It's new to them. I'll be an overnight
sensation. And it's
25 years in. I'm an overnight sensation.
Right. It's over. It's already in a good format. They don't have to have an edit. They probably might have somebody just read through it quick to see if there's any more editing that needs to be done. But it's going to be pretty clean. It's not like it's going to be something handed in a manila envelope off the street from some jabron they don't even know.
It doesn't fit in a manila envelope.
Right. So there's a lot of advantages to that. What else was I going to say? It's like I was watching the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame the other day, and what Mike said just reminded me of something. When Whitney Houston had her first album come out, she says, I'm not an overnight success. I've been doing this stuff for 10 years before her album even came out, so and that's the thing. It's the work behind it. It's cold comfort to the ones without it to know how they struggled and suffered about it. They think you just sit behind here and 2 hours later you have this great looking book with an artist and everything and
following million followers on all the platforms.
And Heather's shaking her head knowingly saying, you got that right. So
I hate to cut this short, but I do have a 3 o'clock. Yeah. But I did want to hear one thing. Heather, we have a nor'easter going on here. How is it in Hawaii today?
It's a little cloudy, but sunny, 80 degrees.
All right. Heather used to live in Rhode Island, and we banished her, and she's winning. She's winning.
And we all wish we were out there right now.
I know. We have a place to stay. So.
Thanks, Mike.
All right. Well, thanks guys for coming on. And a hero, an anti-hero, and a villain walk into a bar is at 3:00. I'll be there. So good seeing you. Thanks again. And support all the authors out there. See you later. See y'all. See you, Heather.